I can cut it in at the beginning because you covered like half the plot.
Yeah.
Spoiler warning if you've never watched Gilmore Girls before, because we're gonna go through most of the plot.
In depth.
Sort of.
That's what we do here, right?
Sort of. Hello, hello!
Hey, hey! Welcome back to another episode of ISBN-Depth. We are here for our July podcast, and I am very excited.
I'm very sad.
It is. It's bittersweet. This will be my last podcast because I am moving on to bigger and better, brighter things, as they say.
College.
I'm not quite convinced of that yet.
She's going to college. I mean, she's already in college.
I'm
she's
already
going
in
to
college.
more college.
Yes, more college, as if anyone needs that. Anyways, but today we will be doing the Rory Gilmore Reading Challenge, which is just very special to me personally. I grew up watching Gilmore Girls, and I watch it religiously over and over again, and it just never stops. So I'm very excited.
I've only watched Gilmore Girls, I think, once all the way through, and I've seen, I think, the first few seasons a couple of times. But
Well, then you just haven't lived.
I haven't. I know. I really enjoyed the series. That's why I was like, let's do this. When I saw when we were putting together our themes, I was like, let's do this. So Anyway, we don't have too much going on this month, but we do want to remind you for the entire month of July, we will be doing Fine Wave Forgiveness. It'll go all the way through the months to the 31st of July. It's school supplies, so you'll bring in 4 small school supplies, like glue sticks, pencils, colored pencils, crayons.
Your basics.
Yeah. I was trying to think of crayons, and I said colored pencils, and that's not what I wanted. Or you can bring in a backpack or a calculator. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you can bring in like 4 small items or a backpack or a calculator per library card. So if you have a household and you've got 2 people that have got fees, you'll need to bring like 8 items or 2 backpacks. At the beginning of July, we'll have like little printout handouts that'll have more specific things. It doesn't have to be anything expensive, Dollar Tree stuff.
Yeah.
Because they can get really expensive with school supplies. It'll be at all 3 branches, so you can, whatever branch you go to the most, you could drop off those items. Also, erasers, index cards, crayons again.
A million different options. Yeah. We really won't turn anything away necessarily. We just like to get the basics. That way we can give it to kids that really can't afford to buy what they really need.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of back to school, it isn't in July, it's in August, but we do want to give you guys a heads up because we know the August episode will probably not be out in time for you guys to know this. But on Saturday, August 5th, we are having another kids and teens back to school clothing swap. So use July to gather up, go through your closet. We'll be doing that like we always do, where you bring in stuff for tokens and then that gets traded out. And
I usually start accepting clothes about the week before.
Yeah.
Obviously, like cleaned, gently used items. I mean, if they're kind of gross, we'll give them right back to you. Yeah. But we go through, we'll count them, and for every piece of item you give us, we'll give you a token. And then those with tokens get first dibs. For shopping, they get a certain time. Those times and stuff will be announced closer. But then after the token shoppers, it's a free-for-all.
Yep.
And so, but we're asking for, like, kids and teens clothes. Now if you're like an adult that's on the smaller side, you can and it's clothes teens would wear, you can drop that stuff off.
Yeah, there are some gray areas with that, but I mean, just use your better judgment. I mean, you know what a teenager would wear. You've been one before.
So that'll be Saturday, August 5th will be like the back to school day. It'll be downstairs, probably in the Birchfield room.
Yep, always is.
At King Family Library, but yeah, we should start taking clothes about a week before that. And that's basically it. There's book clubs and stuff that still are ongoing.
Yeah, you guys can come by and pick up the program booklets like always. We're working on getting those out to everyone.
There's fresh bookmarks, I think, for
for Fireside and
Cookbook by then. Yeah, so.
Yep.
But yeah, as far as like summer reading, most of that's wind down. We're getting ready for the school year to start since school starts earlier now. So yeah, there's not too terribly much. So the meat and potatoes,
the good stuff,
is the Rory Gilmore Reading Challenge. So And that's sort of like the theme for most of our upcoming podcasts, is a reading challenge idea of some sort. We've either pulled it from a reading challenge like people have made, or something to challenge us, like reading outside of genres we're comfortable with, or making sure to include more authors of color or women authors, and or stuff like that. But since it's Launa's last podcast, and I knew she loved the Gilmore Girls, I was like, hey, I saw this reading challenge while I was doing some research. But anyway, if you're not familiar with the Gilmore Girls, it's one of our favorite TV shows. It was created by Amy Sherman Palladio. It ran for about 7 seasons, so 2001 to 2007, with 153 episodes. And there was, a few years ago, an additional spin-off continuation called Gilmore Girls, A Year in the Life, which was on Netflix in 2016 and added about 4 more hour-length episodes. But I think at that point she's like, done, no more.
I think so, which is sad, because if you've watched the Netflix series and you've watched like Gilmore Girls all the way through, it does end on this massive cliffhanger, but it's really not.
Because it's just with the way the show goes, you're like,
you kind of know what they mean whenever it ends, but if you don't know what we're talking about, just go through and watch it, because it's gonna make your life 10 times better.
But if you need information or are not going to go through and watch it, Launa's going to give you a quick breakdown of the plot, probably we found on Wikipedia or something.
Yes, so it basically follows these 2 girls, a mother and daughter, both named Lorelai Gilmore. I promise it's really not as confusing as it sounds. The daughter they call Rory, just as a little nickname. But Lorelai had Rory whenever she was a teenager, and so she's moved out. She's a single mom, and they are in Stars Hollow.
Which is like the most perfect town ever.
It really is. It's just full of bright, wonderful characters and all the small town charm and everything bad that also goes with that, as far as knowing literally everyone and nothing being a secret. But both of them are very ambitious. You have Lorelai, the mom, who is just working tirelessly to get Rory into a good school, because she has ambitions of going to Harvard when the show first starts. And then Lorelai also wants to just open up her own inn, and they all go through different relationships and highs and lows and figuring stuff out as they go. And also navigating just their relationship with each other, because there's times where they want to be more best friends than mother and daughter, and it gets them in trouble in certain situations. So it's just a very good show as far as really depicting relationships between everyone you'll meet in life and navigating the struggles that come with that. So it's just a good show to grow up on, in my opinion.
And one of the B plots, I'm just mentioning this because one of my favorite characters is part of the B plot. So to help Rory get into college and to help her go to this really good prestigious school, Lorelai's parents, Richard and Emily, are very, very wealthy. And Lorelai grew up in a very wealthy environment until she became like a teenage mother. And there was a falling out over that. But they still somewhat kind of stay in contact, and because like Rory wants to do all these great things and Lorelai wants to support her, she just doesn't have the money to, because she's a single mom. Emily and Richard kind of step in to help, but there's a caveat: they have to have like Saturday or Friday night dinners every week. Like hardly no exceptions, and so you get a lot of the friction between Lorelai and her parents. But of course, like the parents and Rory love each other, and
but even they have their ups and downs.
And there's expectations that each have for each other. Like, of course, like Lorelai kind of expects like her mom Emily to like be the worst, but then like Emily steps up and does really nice things to help Lorelai and Rory all the time.
And she also does things are just truly bad.
Awful, yeah. She's if you can't Emily Gilmore's my favorite character, because she's just such a jerk, and I love her. And I don't mean it like she just does awful things. Like, she's just one of those headstrong people, and
she is very headstrong.
Like, I just really enjoy her. Like, even when she's wrong, I'm like, go Emily Gilmore, you deserve it. So anyway, that's kind of the spiel, and on all these, and it's sort of it's a woman, written by a woman, and it's a women-dominated show. Definitely the matriarchs are like the main focus, and their relationship with the men and other girls. Lots of men. Yeah, so like they each have a series of boyfriends of sorts. Lorelai, Rory, and even Rory's friend Lane has some. But it's really really sweet most of the time. And so, anyway, just step back from the show for 2 seconds. The reading challenge we found, and there's multiple, the one we found had 339 books, and that's what we used, but later on we did find one that had 518. So because, like, Rory is very smart and wants to get into Harvard, she's constantly reading. And also Lorelai is, like, they make quotes and quips to movies, and most of these movies are based off of classic books and all kinds of stuff, so it's really well read. So the 339, I think, are the books just, like, explicitly mentioned by title, whereas the larger list of 518 is just references in general, like, please, sir, can I have some more from, like, Oliver Twist? But, so it didn't necessarily get named in that one. But me and Launa went through the smaller list to see how many we had read over time.
And I'm glad we went through the smaller list, because then my numbers would be even more sad.
Yeah, I kind of wish we would have gone over the bigger list, but we just didn't have time. We didn't discover that until, like, real late in the game. Yeah. So I read about 38-ish, because there's some books, like, I'm pretty sure I've read part. Like, the book I selected for today is The Lottery and Other Stories by Shirley Jack. And I knew that I've read The Lottery before you read it in school. It's assigned reading. I hadn't read any of her other stuff, so I think I counted The Lottery as a read, even if I hadn't read everything. And then there were other ones, like, I know I've read, but I necessarily don't remember the plot too, which would be a fun podcast episode to badly describe plots of books we don't remember. But about 38-ish.
Yeah, mine was kind of close. I had 30 that I know for a fact, like, I have fully read. I fully remember it. There was no, like, I don't know if I should count that. But then I also had 11 that I had either, like, partially read, or if it was a collection of something and then I had only really read, like, 1 or 2, I counted that as a partial read for mine. So I guess technically 44, but as far as, like, a solid, straightforward number, I did have 30. But very disappointed in myself. But it's fine.
There's plenty of time.
Better.
There's plenty of time.
Plenty of time.
So we were kind of thinking about topics of the show, and so we came up with, like, favorite characters, least favorite characters, favorite boyfriends, least favorite boyfriends.
Which I think we share our least favorite, but it's fine.
Yeah. Oh, we should probably even do, like, favorite townspeople.
Oh, easy. Easy stuff.
But, and of course we've got Gilmore Girls down at the library to check out.
Yes, I don't know if we have all of the seasons. I know we have the first few. But, I mean, if you want to come and you want to see all of it, I'm sure our other branches have some, and we can always interlibrary loan it, so.
Or if you request it, we could probably end up buying it to complete the series. But, anyway, so favorite characters in the show, as I said, mine's Emily Gilmore.
Yes.
It's not the same actress, but I always think of that meme that went around for a while. It's like, how much can it cost, Michael? It's 1 banana. It's $10. Like, that basically encompasses who Emily Gilmore is a person, even though that wasn't the same actress or the same show. But, so she's very much, it's her way, or the highway. Though she does, as she ages, kind of learn to bend and, become sort of like the cool grandma without giving up who she is. Like, I think she gets a little cooler. But they're very much entrenched in that high-class debutantes. There was an episode where they'd had, like, a debutante ball and everything. It's the old money in the Connecticut? Are they in Connecticut? Yeah, so it's like the old Connecticut. So, like, one of the original 13 colonies. They could probably trace their heritage back, kind of thing. I think Emily's in the DAR and stuff like that. So, surprisingly, she was just my favorite person, though. I think my mom paralleled me and her to Lorelai and Rory. So the day I went off to college, she came home and she had just started season 3, and that was the episode that Rory went to college. So she said she just sat there and cried on the couch because she understood those feelings.
Oh my gosh.
So
but what's funny about that, though, is, like, whenever I had completely submitted, like, all my stuff for the college I'm transferring to, I literally went home and watched. I started it from season 3, like, when she moves in to Yale.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, I just want to feel that a little bit sooner. You know? I don't know. It was like a nice little. I like sitting there and finding shows where I can just, like, go and match it as to, like, what I'm going through. But it's fun.
So this is a show that me and my mom, we have a few, like, series that we can sit down to watch together. One's that 70s show, the other one's Schitt's Creek, and then Gilmore Girls.
Yeah, Gilmore Girls is one me and my mom love. But as far as my favorite character, it's going to be a little out of left field. I feel like a lot of people forget about this man, but Max Medina.
He was Rory's teacher at the high school
at Chilton.
At Chilton, which is a private academy. But he was her English teacher?
He was her English professor, and Max and Lorelai, Rory's mom, had like a very fast relationship, I guess would be a good way to put it. Like, it was one of those things where it's like, this probably shouldn't happen, but it is, and we love it. And I loved it.
And he's pretty.
He's very pretty, and he just loves literature, which just gets me every time. And then he also is just very sweet to Rory. And I really loved that the relationship Rory and Max had together, even though, like, she wasn't necessarily clued in on everything in Lorelai's relationship with Max, but it was still just very sweet because, I mean, Max and Lorelai were engaged. Like, they were supposed to get married. And so I remember there was a scene where Rory, after the engagement had been broken off by Lorelai, Rory goes back to class and sees Max for one of the first times after everything had happened. And he was like, she said something about, I really wish you could have been my dad.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I really wish I could have been your dad as well, you know? So it was just very sweet, and I just loved his character in general.
I think the writing for the show is amazing because it's a lot of the messy interpersonal relationships. It's definitely a show about how people react with other people, with other people, and how like mistakes are made, mistakes are repeated.
Multiple times.
people do stuff you're like, come on, like
you knew it was gonna happen, why'd you do it?
Yeah,
you know. But at the same time, we do that in real life all the time.
Yeah, it's like, so it's one of the towards the later end of the series, like Rory was one of my absolute favorite characters. I related to her quite a bit, and she was also very like head on her shoulders. She was very like, even when things went left field, she was very much a little adult. And then she got into college and she was still fine, but then she got mixed up with like the rich crowd, the kids that would go do stupid stuff with daddy's money. Everything
that Lorelai, her mom, was trying to run away from, she got involved in.
Yeah, and stuff like Lorelai might have done as a teenager herself that would put her in trouble. And then like, because everybody's allowed to make mistakes, but the thing was, it's like Rory was like towards the end of college and then decided to kind of like,
she had her rebel kind of phase, I feel like, a little late.
Yeah, and it seemed a little out of character for her to be having it at that moment. I think she's stealing like a yacht, and I'm like, really?
Yeah, it is one of those like you fight argument things. Let's just go steal a boat, and I'm like, that's literally not something you should do.
Yeah,
or would do. But it's just weird.
Yeah,
but it's honest
in its own way. Yeah, it's honest.
Yeah.
And it's one of the few problems I have with the show is probably that character arc for her, but generally the whole show I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Least favorite characters?
Yes, mine is Sherry.
So, a little backstory. So, Lorelai grew up with Christopher. He was like the next door neighbor. They went to school together.
Christopher is Rory's dad.
And that's, so they end up having Rory, but then Lorelai goes off to be a single mother, and like, I don't remember the exact story. Like, I think Christopher was willing to support her, and she didn't want it.
Christopher wanted to get married.
Yeah.
He was in love with Lorelai, and he wanted to get married and raise the baby and everything, and Lorelai just was too young for that in her mind. And even though everyone was pushing for what Christopher wanted, because that's what was technically the socially proper thing to do.
Yeah.
Like,
if you're
both
not
families.
Yeah, if you're not giving up the baby, then you get married.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was just one of those things where Christopher was still very much so in love with Lorelai.
But they were both very young. They were in like high school.
Yeah, they were in high school. They were, I think she was like 16.
16-ish, yeah.
When she had Rory.
Because that's sort of when the show opens up, because Rory's turning like 16.
Yeah, so it's like the same kind of time frame as when Lorelai ended up leaving. But Christopher is kind of absent in the beginning. You don't really hear a whole lot about him, other than the fact that he's not really there.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden one day he shows up on his motorcycle, and that's when you get to meet him for the first time, and it's just like,
he's very much like the cool dad, but like when he's not around a lot. And through one of Lorelai's many relationships, that they end up getting back together briefly, and it seems like everything's gonna work out. You know, Rory's like, my parents are getting together. Yeah, finally.
Like, it's finally a family. It's complete.
Because he had been dating this woman called Sherry.
Yes.
And that's who Launa doesn't like.
And, like, her actual character at the very beginning really is not that bad. I love the actress who plays her.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just like, okay,
she wanted
things
her
were
own
finally,
family.
yeah. She wanted her own family, and she wasn't completely wanting to be, like, estranged from Rory. Like, she did try.
Yeah.
But it was just very awkward, and it was like she kind of messed up something really good. Because Sherry and Christopher dated, and then they broke up, and then Christopher went back to Lorelai, and things were happy again. And then they're sitting there thinking everything's going to work out, just the three of them, and then Sherry ends up calling Christopher saying that she's pregnant. So it went from, like, everything's great to, okay, well, I can't abandon another woman with my baby. So he goes back, and then Sherry just ends up abandoning him, and that's when I just did not like her at all.
Probably my least favorite character is Rory's best friend Lane. She has a couple of boyfriends, I think like maybe 2.
Yeah, just a handful.
And the one she ends up being with at the end of the show and into the next, like, reiteration of it, his name was Zach. And because her first boyfriend, Dave is my favorite character. He's my favorite boyfriend out of the show. I love Dave. He was only there for like a season. He ended up going off to go to do like General Hospital or something. Like he got a big role somewhere else, which I understand. So they had to write Dave off. But Lane's mother was they're Korean, and she's very strict, very Christian, and that, so like Dave had to really win her over,
and he did,
and he was so sweet, and Lane loves music, and they were doing a band, and like he's just my favorite character, but because he gets written off. Great. Lane still kind of continues the band, which Zach's one of the band members, but he's kind of immature and kind of obnoxious, and he's
very obnoxious.
And that's just who Lane kind of ends up with. It feels like she settles. Like, I don't feel like she ever fell in love with him. It was just more of he fell in love with her, and she's like, might as well.
I mean, there is a very clear episode where it's like, oh my gosh, I like Zach. Like, there is that episode there, but it just wasn't as convincing.
Yeah, as like her other relationships, or even with other people. Like, it just kind of felt like we need to put Lane with somebody.
Yeah, and she just kind of fell into whoever was
around her
closest.
So
yeah, I agree. He is my least favorite boyfriend. And you already said your favorite boyfriend. Mine is Jess Mariano, which is one of Rory's major flings. And I've never been the girl to watch a show and go for like the bad guy type when it comes to that kind of like trope or whatever. Or stereotype, but I just love Jess. And maybe it's just because he's, like, the only boyfriend she has that really, like, reads.
And has, like, the same hobbies as her.
Yeah.
Because her first boyfriend, Dean, which is funny because it's Jared Padalecki, which he plays Sam on Supernatural.
Yeah.
And his brother's Dean in the show. But, he started out as a good boyfriend.
He was fantastic. I mean...
But then he kept getting, like, kind of insecure about, like, the money and the wealth and how smart she was. And then they ended up breaking up. And then he, like, instantly goes off and gets married to, like, a girl he dates barely, and then they get pregnant. No, they don't.
No, they don't. He cheats.
I know, but
they don't have the chance to get pregnant.
No, I thought maybe I'm thinking of another... Is it maybe in the Year in the Life that they had a baby? Anyway, he does cheat, and this is one of the most annoying moments I have with Rory, is because Rory gets jealous when he gets a wife, so they end up cheating together for a brief amount of time.
And I just hate that. Like, I know it's not necessarily all Dean's fault. I mean, it takes two to tango, right? But at the same time, I'm just like, Dean, just get over it.
Yeah.
And Rory needed to get over it, and neither of them really did. And I think it was just so frustrating.
And it was her first boyfriend, too. Kind of thing. So, and then she ends up with Jess, who is Luke, who's like the main love interest for Lorelai on and off throughout the seasons. And they do get together, and Luke's such a spectacular character. I love him. He's such like the grumpy character.
Yeah, but he has such like sweet moments.
Yeah, he's a kind person, but he's just so grumpy. Like, I can't believe I'm shoveling your driveway at like 4 a.m, but whatever.
Yeah, and then he's like, "This is my shovel."
Yeah, this is my shovel. Yeah, so he's great, but his nephew comes over. His troubled nephew Jess comes into town, and Stars Hollow is very much a Hallmark movie.
Yes, so Jess just ruins all of that like perfect image.
Yeah.
Of Stars Hollow, and he really just doesn't like Stars Hollow when he first gets there anyway, so it's just one of those things where it's like they don't want him there and he doesn't want to be there, so he's just kind of forced into it. But then he finds Rory, and Rory's kind of like his light in the darkness in Stars Hollow. Like, he's just very uninterested in everything else, but Rory just catches his attention. And it's just so, I don't know, I liked that Rory kind of pulled him out of a dark place, and then later on, Jess is just like, what are you doing? Like, you're being stupid, and kind of tries his best to pull her out, and she just ignores him, which is just very sad. But.
Yeah. So, and then I think her other last main boyfriend is, what's his face from Harvard? Logan. Yeah. Which is
from Yale.
From Yale, not Harvard. Yeah, the other Harvard. So anyway, and it deals with like fun things like Rory's main goal was to get into Harvard for the longest time, but her family was a Yale family, and eventually she kind of gets swayed over to it, and it's kind of like her route of pre-planned life's changing, and it's the subtle shifts of this show that I enjoy, like, and the subtleties between characters and character arcs. Let's see here. So, I typed in like Gilmore Girls characters because I was trying to look up how to spell a name, and I forgot about Paris Geller, which is like basically
I don't see how anyone could forget about Paris.
She's like, so Emily likes her way to like a T. Paris is like medically has to have things her way or she comes undone, and she's basically like, for the first few seasons, Rory's academic / like just rival in general.
Yeah, very
her
much
bully almost.
Nemesis.
Yeah,
not really bully as far as nemesis.
Yeah, nemesis is better, and then like later on they become like best friends. But I think it's only because like
Paris needs
because Rory's the only one who can handle how
crazy
Paris she is. Yeah. But I forgot about Paris, and I was like, oh crap, I really liked Paris too. Not at first, but she grew on me, which was amazing.
She really grew on me, and so did Doyle. I did not like Doyle, which Doyle and Paris end up together, but like at first I was like, Doyle's just so annoying. And then he gets together with Paris, and I'm like, this works. Something that should never happen. But it works. Like, if I knew a couple like this in real life, I would sit them down and be like, this is horrible. Like, what are you doing with your life? But then it just works perfectly for them because they're both crazy.
Yeah. They're each other's kind of crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, like, random villagers. So, me and my mom went to go see the new Guardians of the Galaxy, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and Mom kept looking at this character. She goes, where is he from? Where do I know him from? And it was Kirk. The guy who played Kirk from Gilmore Girls.
He is one of my favorite characters. Just like, I love how he's just everywhere.
He's like the town weirdo, but also the town, like, jack of all trades, master of none. He's like, for the first few seasons before they developed him as a character, he was just literally in every store they went into, I guess, to avoid having extra characters. Yeah. He'd be like in a salon, or he would be like
the thing though is like, no matter how many jobs he had, there was a few that he was good at. Yeah. You know, like when he worked in the beauty salon, he was just like, that is not your color. Yeah. You know, and I loved that. But then he also like worked in the movie theater and like did basically nothing. So it's just like, how do you have... Because it gets revealed, like, later on in the show that he's, like, the town millionaire because he has all these different jobs that he's worked, like, his entire life. But it's like, how did you make that much money working that many jobs when you're not good at any of them?
Hey, you know? it's rise and grind, baby.
Yes. And I do love Kirk. I will say, though, one underdog in the story, in my opinion, is Miss Babette.
She runs... no, she's the neighbor with the cat.
She's the neighbor with the cat. And I just love how, like, spunky... she is and how aggressive she is towards like the young men in the show. Because it reminds me of my great grandmother, just like seeing a young man walking by and be like, I want that.
Also, if you're a Melissa McCarthy fan, she got her start out in the show playing Suki, which is one of Lorelai's best friends.
Yeah, she's the chef at the inn, and it's just, she's a interesting character. One person that like I really liked, and then sometimes I was like, okay, please shut up, and then other times I was like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. So there's just a lot of characters to love and a lot of characters to hate.
Music too. I can't think. The Troubadour Man. They would have this random man walking on the streets, you know, and it was like a one-man band thing. He'd have like a guitar, a harmonica, like a drum, and he'd play like a bunch of like soft music, which I think you can probably find on Spotify and stuff. And I think he was actually like a real musician person. Like went on to have like probably a pretty successful band, but like Stars Hollow, it's just a good feeling. It's like watching the old Disney Channel original movies or something like Halloween Town. Super scenic, and they have these cute festivals. There's this one, I think Jess took part in it, but it was like this picnic raffle where there were different baskets and you would vote on them. or you'd raffle off, and then the person who made the basket would go have like lunch with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and he was trying to get Rory's basket, and then they just had all kinds of cute festivals.
It's just like everything you wish you could have growing up.
Yeah,
it's like that stuff doesn't actually happen around here, you know. So it's just like you get that very homey feeling. Stars Hollow does kind of feel like home sometimes.
I think I'm gonna go home and rewatch Gilmore Girls. Before we forget, and as we start to wrap up, our reading list picks. So like I said, I picked The Lottery and Other Stories by Shirley Jackson because I knew I'd read The Lottery, but I was like, what's her other stories?
Yeah.
It was good, I guess. It's not my favorite. Like, The Lottery was fine. It doesn't have quite as much of a shock as it did when I read it in like 5th grade for the first time. But there was a couple stories I would say were interesting. The very first one, let me see here, The Intoxicated was pretty good. Actually, I went ahead and read the introduction last because I didn't really want any spoilers. But this girl, A.M. Holmes, did the introduction and kind of said it best. So Jackson writes in Stunning Simplicity, there's a graceful economy to her prose as she charts the smallest movements, perpetual shifts. Her stories take place in small towns and kitchens and cocktail parties. Her characters are all trapped by petty prejudices of people who make themselves feel good by thinking they are somehow better than us all. They live in houses that need painting and furnished rooms inside the lives of others, as though in a psychic hallway house, having lost their footing. They are shy, unassuming folks, for all intents and purposes, would pass through the physical world unnoticed. They care about appearances and how they are seen by others. This is about the politics on the macro level, so they possess certain kinds of respectability and a healthy dose of small-town cruelty. So it'll go through things about, like, how we're, seen by an outsider. Our private life's made public. So there's, like, 25 stories in all in this one. But she kind of just hits, like, the American psyche of the time. From The Intoxicated, for young girls always known... They're far... Hold on. The Intoxicated, for young girls always know far more than others and are both understanding and perpetually disappointed at the behavior of their elders, male elders in particular, or the well-intentioned but racist Mrs. Williams and After You, My Dear Alphonse. So they were good. For the most part, like, I don't know if I could have picked out a bigger meaning. It was just kind of a subtle feeling of like, oh, that's a little wrong. Yeah. Some of them are a lot easier to pin down, like My Dear Alphonse, but overall, I don't think I would maybe revisit it for anything other than maybe just to maybe look at her prose, because I like how she wrote nervous people and the habits, because these stories were written in like the 1930s, 1940s, but the mannerisms and the things people do and the thought patterns she writes her characters in are stuff we do, like how they clean the house and it's just a little minutia of life. So like it would be like an interesting maybe study in literature and just like how she wrote.
I can see that,
but I don't think I would necessarily.
Not something to just pick up.
Yeah, I wouldn't. You were telling me about yours, and yours sounded a lot more interesting.
Mine was fantastic, which when we sat down and started doing like the reading list, like overview and stuff, I saw like so many things that I owned at home. And I was like, oh, this is a great excuse to get a classic off of my shelf that I've just had for years and never read, as we both talked about in our June bonus episode. But I was going through the list, and I was like, what on earth is this book? And it's called Ella Minnow Pea. Like Ella as in like a girl's name, minnow as in the fish, and then pea as in like the vegetable. And so I was like, that's just a very weird title. I was like, what's this about? And so it's about this like fictionary island of it's like Nalopton or Naltville or something like that. But it's all centered around this one sentence, and it's the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And so in the book, they created this random, it's by Mark Dunn, by the way, and they created this random person that like invented that sentence, even though he doesn't actually exist, and his last name's Nollop. And so this island was created entirely, it's like off the coast of, I think, one of the Carolinas in the United States. And so this entire island basically like not worships him at first,
idolizes him,
but he is very much an idol. And they have this big statue where that entire sentence is spelled out in tiles. And so because they thought at this time that it was like such a great like achievement for a man to be able to create a sentence with
every letter of the alphabet.
Yeah, which I think is called a pangram, if I'm correct in that. I think it explains it a little bit at the beginning of the book as far as vocabulary goes. But slowly, as the story goes on, tiles start dropping from the statue of the sentence. And so the High Council, which is basically like the government for this island, takes it as some like divine intervention from Nollop that the letter that is dropping from the statue is no longer supposed to be used at all. So like I think the first thing they lose is like a Z, so something like that can be very easily avoided. But when that tile falls, you can't say any word that has the letter Z in it. You can't write it. Like if your name is Ezra, change your name.
Mm-hmm.
Or just like spell it differently. Like you literally cannot use it anymore. Like it's just completely gone. Like pretend it does not exist. And if you do use it, you get like 3 different warnings. So the first is just like a verbal warning. The second, you can choose between being flogged and being put in like a headstock for like so many hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third is just flat out banishment from the island. And if you try to return after banishment, you get executed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very like dystopian, but the writing is like, because tiles start to fall and it's told in the point of view of letters between the different characters that you meet, you can see the letters going away. And so it just keeps dropping and keeps dropping and keeps dropping, and you see them have to find synonyms for things, and they can't just put an asterisk where a word was. Like, they just flat out can't use it anymore. So it's like their entire civilization starts to crumble because it was built on words.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you can't use those words anymore, and you can't, like, you're literally censored to, like, the highest extreme of censorship there is, like, it just, your entire civilization starts to kind of crumble. Like, they can't even say the days of the week anymore. Like, they finally get to the point in the book where they're just so over trying to create something solid that, like, one person writing a letter will call October octopause, like something that just doesn't make sense. And then the next time it's a different person, they're calling October something completely different. Like, there's just no standard anymore. So it's just very interesting, and they end up trying to, like, save it. Like, they make a deal with the High Council that if they can create a sentence with every letter of the alphabet using less characters than Nollop did in his sentence, then they would reinstate everything. But it gets to the point where Ella, the main girl, she's, like, the only one left. Like, everyone's either been banished because they've gotten too many warnings, or they've just given up. Some have just flat out, like, passed away. Like, it's just very isolating. And I think that's the whole point of it, is that it's supposed to show how isolating censorship can be.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's such a short book.
And kind of topical.
And very topical. But he does it in such a simple way. And it's just kind of crazy that you can get so much out of it. And it's just a book I've never heard anyone talk about before.
I know, like, as you're talking, I was like, this would be great to read in, like, high school or something
exactly.
like that.
Like, and I don't understand why it's not talked about more often. And I went through Goodreads and, like, looked at the reviews of it. And some people were like, what a childish way to talk about something so important. I was like, yeah, what a childish way to talk about something so important. Like, isn't that the good part about it?
Yeah, to get other people to understand it at any reading
yeah.
level. Yeah.
And I mean, it literally, in the very last letters, you can see that there's just no point in communicating anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's isolated. She can't even say what she needs to say. So there's just no point in it. So it's just very, like, defeating.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up figuring everything out, and I won't spoil it because I really do think anyone listening should read it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was brilliant, honestly.
See, I want to read it now too, because, like, this one was fine. It was just subpar.
Well, it's right here for you.
Yeah, you can check it out at my local library.
Yes, you
with
can.
my library card.
And that's another thing, is that it got me reading a book here at the library. I didn't buy it.
Good for you.
Yeah,
good for you.
I applauded myself for that one.
I know, when I was selecting my books, I had a couple that were, like, on my shelf that I was like, let me read. Or there was a couple ones that I, like, I think I wanted to read, like, a book by Virginia Woolf, but I kind of scratched that one out. One of them by title sounded really good, but I realized it was kind of about politics, and I was, like actually about politics, and I was like, I don't want to read that right now. And then Yeah, I ended up settling on this one, but I feel like there was a couple that I owned as classics that I was like, I should read this. I just didn't.
Yeah, but it was very interesting to like look through the list and just kind of randomly pick something I had never heard of before. So, 10 out of 10 would recommend.
So yeah, you too could try the Rory Gilmore Reading Challenge at home and use your local library to help you. And we've got 2 recommendations to start you off with.
Well, 1 half recommendation and then 1 recommendation.
I mean, someone might like this. It just wasn't for me.
Gotcha. Well, I think that wraps it up, though, as far as our topic goes for today.
Our next podcast, we'll have my new co-host, Alexis, on. Yes. It'll be our August episode, and we're doing teen and tween reads, things in honor of going back to school, series that we read as children, like the Warriors series or Aragon, or basically. So we're gonna be, I don't know what Alexis has picked, but we're gonna aim to try to reread an old childhood favorite and talk about it.
Yep, so things will be changing, but one thing will always stay the same, and that is the fact that Ben still does all of the grunt work of everything. So
we love and appreciate Ben, because without him there would be no podcast.
Exactly. So thank you guys for everything. I've enjoyed the past little over a year of podcasting with Sam.
This was sort of your inception.
Yeah.
And you're moving on.
I am.
Leaving me alone behind.
Yeah, she'll
bereft.
Get over it. But anyways, thank you guys for watching as always, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye. Bye.